Alright, so these videos are going to be back to back. I'm just giving them to you in a shortened version, that way it's not one long video. But if you watched part one of this video, then you know some of the things that I do when I consider whether or not I want to purchase a bow online. Whether or not it's something that I consider to be as described, some of the things that I watch out for, some of the things I look for, and what there are many times that I purchase bows or even steer clear of bows because of very minute details in the listing, in the pictures, and things of that nature. But I have got this bow here in hand, and I real quickly wanted to share with you the very first thing that I feel you should do when you get a used bow, especially if you don't get it from a dealer. But I would do this. You're supposed to do this anytime you pick up your bow and shoot it, but I would do this especially even if you get it from an online seller or things of that nature. The bow's been shipped to you, you don't know what the package has been through. Most guys package their bows very well, that I found, but you certainly want to check out the overall condition of the bow. You want to check out the safety features of the bow. Some tips, tricks that I've learned that I've got from watching other YouTube videos. Shout out to several of the guys that do regular videos, because I got most of this stuff from you. But a couple of things that I want to do. First, I want to check the safety of the bow. Is this bow going to be safe to shoot? I don't want to pull a bow back because I'm really excited to get it. It looks really cool. I've anticipated this day for the past 4 or 5 days. I got a bunch of excitement and anxiety about shooting this bow. I do not want to pull this bow back the first time and have it blow up on me. That would be a bad thing to happen. So the first thing you want to do is go through, is this bow shootable? Is this bow in shootable condition? Is it safe to pull back? Is it safe to fling an arrow? So the very first thing that I'll usually inspect is the string. I'll usually go some specific points that I want to check. Serving. I want to make sure that the serving's intact. I want to make sure that there's no separation in the serving, especially where the serving goes around the cams. And especially where the serving goes around the module. The string goes around the module when you pull it back. A lot of times there's wear there if the bow's been shot a lot. This particular bow, the string appears as if it hasn't been shot very much at all. The gentleman appeared to have kept it waxed. Very clean string, served in all the right areas. Professionally served, might I add, or somebody who knew what they were doing, because it was back served over itself, which is actually the way you're supposed to do any kind of serving that you are going to have a lot of wear and tear to. Keeps the serving tight. This bow in particular, Mathews, the cable roller guard does it, almost the whole cable is served on both sides. So Mathews in particular does a very good job of making sure that your cables don't have much wear and tear, which I really like. So you don't have much issue there. But for instance, if you get a bow with cable slide on it, sometimes those cables can get some wear. I had a Bowtech Commander one time that it was a cable slide system, not a roller guard or anything like that, and indeed the cables were worn and frayed, and I had to end up replacing the cables because the cable slide was not the correct cable slide on the bow. And it was a Teflon material, but the cables were actually, there was so much strain on the cables that they dug into the actual slide, and when they did that, they created kind of a rubbing sensation that would fray, that really wore on the cables. And I guess the gentleman had shot it and didn't realize it. It didn't look like it had been there very long, but I had to replace the cables because I had 2 or 3 strings that were, frayed. Obviously, you can shoot a bow with 2 or 3 frayed strings. These strings are weight tested well above any kind of force you're going to apply to them with the bow, but still not a good idea. There's a reason there's anywhere between 20 and 24 strands to a bowstring, and you go into it without 2 or 3 of those strands, and you're asking for trouble. So I ended up having the strands replaced, but this bow appears to be in good shape. The strings, especially the serving and around the cams, is in very good shape. And so you really want to test that out, because once you start setting this bow up, you're going to be putting a little bit of strain on that string, putting a peep sight in and tying some silencers on that, and you don't want something to mess up. Second thing I check out in particular is the limbs. Got a really great tip from somebody not too long ago that showed his idea of trying to see if there were hairline cracks in the limbs. There's kind of a difference between split limbs and solid limbs, and it's fortunate that I've got a Matthews Reason, which you all probably know is a solid limb bow here, because they're a little bit more difficult to inspect. So the first thing you want to do is you want to get a cotton ball, and I've already done this with this bow. But you want to take a cotton ball and you want to run it up against the edges of the limb. Most of the time when your limb cracks, it's going to crack around the edges. Okay? And you want to especially do it around the limb pocket. Okay? And the arm here that supports the limb, because sometimes you're going to crack at a stress point on that limb. As well, of particular importance, and I'm going to come up and bring it close to you so you can see it, of particular importance, you certainly want to run your cotton ball in through the V on the solid limb split where it splits, so that the cam can set in there. Now, like I said, I've already done this to this bow, but what will happen is if you have a crack in that limb, part of that cotton ball will start to deposit itself in that limb, and you'll be able to tell and see. One area that I was really concerned about when I actually got this bow, and hopefully you can see it right there. You can see the limb stop, the string stop that Matthews has, that characteristic that attaches to the top and bottom limbs. But there's some wear right here. You can see that silver shiny portion right there. That was actually where the guy had nicked it, and there's actually a very small portion of the limb right there where my index finger is that the camel is actually chipped off of. And so I was kind of concerned that the limb might be damaged and I might end up having to replace a limb or two. Remember, you don't have a warranty on a used bow, so it gets kind of costly. However, most of the time you buy them at such a cheap price that, you know, $100, $150 for a pair of limbs isn't nothing, and you've still got a quality piece of equipment. But it's still $150 out of your pocket, so I was kind of concerned about that. And indeed, actually what has happened is the limb is, the camel's just chipped off. The limb, the fiberglass, the integrity of the limb is still intact. And so there's no problem shooting this bow. And in fact, I've had a couple of bows, I shoot one now where that's been the case, where the actual camo finish. Most of the camo finishes on these bows is a real thick finish. I don't necessarily know how they apply it, but it does a very good job of protecting the limbs, the fiberglass on the limbs, and the composite material that they're made out of. So anyway, I inspect the limbs. String and the limbs are two of the most important parts to inspect on your bow. Other things that I want to inspect, I want to inspect the axles. You know, this is why in the previous video I mentioned pictures, good detailed pictures of these areas. You want to inspect the axles, and you want to inspect the limb pockets as well. You want to inspect all the screws. For instance, many bow companies now have the string stops that stop up against the limb. You want to inspect all your Allen wrench screws and everything like that. Make sure all the nuts and bolts of this bow are tightened down. Don't tighten them down too much, but make sure that they're tightened down. And then you're probably safe to go ahead and draw your bow back and set up a rest on it, draw it back, and shoot it. You know, but that is what I'll do to inspect the safety of the bow. Thanks for watching.